Well, I'm a bit surprised by it, certainly, but I think, as the details still emerge on this, it looks like the right deal because this LA Lakers draft pick that they got from Phoenix as part of this trade is one of the more valuable trade assets that exists out there that you could possibly acquire. I mean, you've got a chance potentially to get the pick this year and have it be, sixth or seventh if the Lakers were to go on a bit of a tear down the stretch, which seems borderline unthinkable. But if not, and if it falls in the top five and is protected, rolls over to next year when it's only top three protected. So you could be talking about potentially getting the fourth or the fifth pick in the draft for a guy who was the 11th pick in the draft. I mean, anytime you have a chance to make a trade like that, I think you have to.
Right. Now, obviously here, people are going crazy because they're looking at it as two steps back. I mean, do you look at it as this team who's only got 12 wins taking more steps backwards?
Certainly, I think, that you'd expect next season. I don't think at this point it's a huge difference maker. Carter Williams versus Isaiah Cannon for the rest of the season, it's, maybe a win over the course of that period. Next year, I think, is when it will probably be a step back, especially if you can't acquire a point guard, whether it's, in the draft or in free agency. I mean, the other thing is the potential that, D'Angelo Russell could be the guy for the Sixers in this year's draft, and it's probably easier to make a deal with Carter Williams now when you're dealing from a point of strength than if, other teams feel like your hand is forced by who you've added.
Yeah, so this deal isn't so much about them wanting to move Carter Williams as much as it is this was a deal that was almost too good to pass up. Is that what you think?
I think so. I mean, I think it's very similar to, when they got 2 first-round picks for Drew Holiday. I think that was a case of just tremendous value and taking advantage of that. I mean, the Lakers are very unlikely to be a competitive team next season. They're going to have a lot of cap space again, but you're going to be in the same position that they were last summer, where you're trying to convince people to play with an aging Kobe Bryant on a team that doesn't have a lot of depth. They will have, in all likelihood, a top 5 pick from this year, along with a healthy Julius Randle. So they'll be a little bit more talented, but still it's hard to see them being anywhere but near the very bottom of the Western Conference, and I think that's what Sam Hinkie is counting on.
I mean, ultimately, we've talked a lot about Michael Carter-Williams over the last year and a half or so, Kevin. It just seems that there was always his name, and there was always something that just didn't stick right with Sam Hinkie. So he pulls the deal here. He also makes a couple other moves today, KJ McDaniels, and he gets McGee. What did you think of the day Hinkie had overall?
I think pretty good. I definitely liked the McGee trade. It's not money that they were likely to spend next season. It doesn't matter at all this year because they're under the salary floor. And you get a first-round pick that could be pretty decent if the Thunder, makes the playoffs, ends up in the 6th or 7th seed in the Western Conference, which I think they'll improve after the trade deadline with the move that they made. You're looking at getting something like the 19th or the 20th pick for just taking on McGee's salary for 1 year. I think that's an easy choice for Hinkie. The McDaniels trade, a little more interesting, more complex. It seems like, they were worried about his salary going up next season and him no longer being, an undervalued asset like they hoped to get in the second round. And then you have a need at the point guard position after trading Carter Williams. So, Kanan was a guy who went in a similar part of the draft the year before and still has another, team-friendly year left on his deal. So I think that made some sense, even though obviously disappointing, given how exciting KJ McDaniels had been, a fine for the Sixers to lose him so quickly.
Yeah, last week you look at a team that looked like, all right, they're taking a step in the right direction. The stats were looking like this is a team that's improving defensively. You got, a 6'6" point guard. You got a long, shot blocker out on the perimeter. And now they're both gone today. It is a little bit of a, depressing feeling when you had these young, athletic defenders, and now, whoop, you don't even have a point guard tomorrow night.
Yeah, I was wondering on air as we were doing our True Hoop TV Live. I could not remember who was the point guard at the end of the season until I came up with Tim Frazier, who I don't know if he's even still on a 10-day contract at this point.
Not at this moment, no.
Okay. I'm sure he will be by tomorrow, and it's not the first time he's played a lot of minutes. Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that they had played well lately makes this a little tougher than if it happened a month ago. But at the same time, their overall point differential over the course of the season was by far the worst in the NBA, and I think there was a little element of fool's gold in some of those wins.
Yeah, obviously, this is a team that did not have high expectations. Now, they put out this slogan for their campaign coming up that this starts now. Michael Carter-Williams' picture was on that with Embiid and Nerlens Noel, and then the next day. So it's pretty shocking the next day after they put that slogan out that he is gone. But this had to be something that they just could not refuse, obviously, right? I mean, this isn't something that they've been working on. This is something that comes to you at the last minute, and you decide, you know what, this is too good to refuse. We got to do it.
Yeah, it's always tough to tell what the machinations are that go on behind the scenes. And, oftentimes you'll have a deal that you've talked about a month ago, and then there's nothing, and then, all of a sudden the urgency of the deadline causes those talks to pick back up where they were. But, this happens. I mean, I remember in Seattle when we traded Desmond Mason as part of the Ray Allen trade right before we were giving out some sort of, collector's item with Desmond Mason to fans. So that's kind of the nature of the beast, and probably more so in Philadelphia with Sam Hinkie's, desire to move anything for value than most places.
Well, and ultimately value is the name of the game here. The possible pick from Oklahoma City. Obviously, they have that Heat pick that's still kind of lingering out there, and now potentially this Lakers pick. Kevin, they could have 4 first-round picks. How dangerous could they be on draft day?
It gives you a lot of flexibility to move up and around, do whatever you need to do. As we saw them move back and take advantage of that flexibility last year with the swap with Orlando, where they got back their pick and got Dario Saric. But a lot of options certainly, and that's the way Sam Hinkie likes it.
Well, we'll see, obviously, as this thing unfolds today. Kevin, you're a guy who's obviously on the analytics side. I'm assuming you are in favor of what Sam Hinkie's done today.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think that, Michael Carter-Williams' future in the league was still up in the air, and to get the potential, you're swinging for the fences here, and you got the potential to have a home run deal. The deal I'd compare this to, this would be a lot of patience, but if you remember when Vancouver Grizzlies actually at the time traded for Otis Thorpe from Detroit for a distant lottery protected pick, and each year the protection got slightly less, and they kept keeping it, and then eventually it came to the point where it was only top 1 protected, and Detroit got the number 2 pick in the draft for Otis Thorpe. Now, they ended up using it on Darko Milicic. That's a different part of the story. But, they could have had Carmelo Anthony or Dwayne Wade. That's the kind of value that you can potentially get with these kind of escalating or diminishing protections.
Well, we know the Sixers are going to have their eyes on a lot of teams in the standing to see if those picks get protected or not. Kevin Pelton over at ESPN.com, at K Pelton for more on all of the trades today that went down in the NBA. Is obviously the Sixers a very active team, and obviously we don't even know who's going to play point guard tomorrow night when they get back out on the floor. All right, Kevin, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.